whose opinion matters, and how do you let in whose opinion matters, and how do you let by those who don't.
Welcome to the Confident Podcast. I am Lisa Tarkington, your guide to mastering confidence in leadership. As a business and leadership coach, keynote speaker, and the founder behind the nonprofit Lead, I am here to equip you with the confidence, clarity, and strategy to create game-changing results so that you can step into your power as the person that you are meant to be. If you press play today, it's because you're ready for something bigger. Each episode, I'll bring you real, raw conversations and actionable insights that will empower you to redefine your leadership, reclaim your confidence, and transform into the unstoppable force you've always been known to be. This isn't just another podcast. It's your journey that we're on together. So buckle up and let's dive into this transformation. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Confident Podcast. I am your host, Lisa Tarkington, and I think I say this every time I get on the mic, but I'm excited for today's conversation. I've said this, I think, multiple times, but that means that we have some really great guests that have been on this podcast, new thoughts, new perspectives. I feel like, you know, when you're just so laser focused that you kind of like lose the time and you're just like, tell me more. That's how these conversations have been going. And one of my favorite things to talk about is women, leadership, sports, all separate, all together, love it all. And so today we're going to be chatting with Kristen Kelsay, who is the head coach of Michigan State University's volleyball team. Yes, she's a D1 volleyball head coach, and she's a collegiate athlete that played at Michigan State as well. Fun fact, we've had Kathy, George, and Mike on their coaches for Grand Rapids Rise. I think I've shared in their piece that I did stats while they were at Michigan State for their team. And again, fun fact, when Kristen was playing, I was the same age as her, and I had an internship with the volleyball team, and I was doing stats for when she was playing. So it's fun to see full circle moments and people that I haven't seen in 15 years and how those relationships that maybe weren't full at that time can come back in different ways, and you can look back and be like, wow, like it's cool to see how the different paths have crossed. And so today we're going to be talking about women in sports. We're going to be talking about what leadership looks like. And I really want you to tune in and lean into some of the things that we talk about when it comes to sympathy and empathy. When we talk about like harsh truth and confrontation and how to have conversations and just the power of what that can look like. And if you're a parent, especially one that has kids in sports, or just any activity, again, I really want you to lean into this conversation because we both have different thoughts on, and good thoughts on systematic changes that we'd love to see and some advice for parents as well. So let's dive into today's conversation. Welcome, Kristen, to the Confident Podcast. I am so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So I've got to ask, I feel like you're a little bit younger than me. So you're probably in your early 30s. You're a D1 head coach, Big Ten. Tell me how you got here. Like, how cool. First off, congratulations. Like, this is probably a dream of many people's, right? And you get to be back where you started, right? You were a college athlete for MSU and we're back. So like, tell us how you got here. What were the good, the bad, and the beautiful moments?
Oh gosh, Lisa, how much time do you have?
Right?
I said this at my press conference and I loved it. You know, like I think life has a way of bringing you through peaks and valleys, right? And when I look back on all of, what's the last probably 15 years of my life, I can see how every decision I made or every road like led me to this moment. Like I can see it. Now I couldn't see it at the time, right? I had moments in especially the last 6 years where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what is the plan? Where I wrestled with my faith or I wrestled with decisions to say like, I don't know what's happening next. And yet, wow, like sitting at this desk a year in, feeling like the peace that surrounds me, that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be is just, it's what I want my athletes to feel. It's what I want my staff to feel, that like you are exactly where you're supposed to be in this moment. And so I'm filled with deep gratitude, right, for the twists and turns, the roads that brought me away from here just to bring me back, help me learn the life lessons I needed to learn in order to be a mentor and a leader of the women in this program.
I love that. Well, and you gave me chills when you were, having peace of exactly where you're at. But to your point, 6 years ago, you said, I didn't feel that way. And so take us there and take us to, I always say, what do I want to be when I grow up? And the midlife crisis, that is usually our quarter life crisis that kind of happens. Like, what made you think that this might not be the path for you? Or like, I guess what was coming up for you then?
Well, I was presented this opportunity to be a Big Ten assistant coach really young. So I graduated from Michigan State. I started my master's. I was working in our academic center, right?
Okay.
I had some opportunities to play pro. I was good. I wasn't that good, respectfully. So I was like, I don't really know if I want to do that. I was a psych major, and so the Jim Pignataro was the head of our academic center, and he offered me a GA position to get my master's and to work in our. I was SAC president. I was really involved. I was like, he was like, well, why Michigan State loves you. You love Michigan State. Why leave? Why not just get your master's and figure out what's next? And I said, love it. So that summer, like a week after I graduated, I started working in the academic center. 3 months later, Kathy George, my head coach, brings me in her office, and she's asking me all these like life questions, right? Are you fulfilled? Do you like what you're doing? And, it was like my first fall that I was like being a GA, and I was tailgating, and I was like enjoying the college experience.
Yeah.
But I was not fulfilled, right? I didn't have the same mentorship and the same relationships. And for the first time in my whole life, I wasn't part of a team or wasn't in a sport. And I remember she got up and closed the door, and I was like, am I in trouble? Right? Like, uh-oh, like what did I do? Like here's this woman who's been a mother figure, coach for me the last 4 years. And she told me that Russ Carney, her longtime associate head coach, was retiring. She was promoting Mike Golick, and she wanted to hire me. I just turned 22. As her full-time assistant coach, back when we only got 2 full-time assistants, not as a volunteer, not as a GA, like full-time, 22. I mean, I had to have special clearance to rent a car and to rent a hotel room, like to go recruiting. I was coaching half the team that I just been to a Sweet 16 with, and I said yes. And in that moment, my life changed, right? Like she'll give me a lot of grief because it took me a week to say yes. And I always, respond because I knew the impact of the decision I was making. I felt the weight of the opportunity you had offered to me, and I didn't take it lightly, right? I didn't say yes on the spot. That's just not who I am. But I said, I didn't say yes on the spot. And then a week later be like, oh, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah,
like,
just kidding. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like, oh, I'm just going to do this like, halfway and then like see what's next. It's like, you're offering me the opportunity to be a Big Ten assistant coach at 22. I understand the impact this is going to have personally and professionally. I called my 4 best friends from high school. I was like, you can't get married in the fall. Like you just can't, like the things you're worried about at 22, and none of them did, which I love.
Very kind of them. Yes.
Yeah. And if you look, Lisa, that was January 2015. January 2025, I walk into this office as head coach at Michigan State, so neither of us knew, but 10 years almost to the date, I come back as head coach with a lot of life lived, a lot of experiences. But I wouldn't be here today without that opportunity that Kathy provided for me. And for her, I'm forever grateful.
I love that. And I have to, this is what came up when you were talking is, what do you think she saw in you that made her think like, she's it, I want her? What stood out?
We had a really special relationship. She'll introduce me now as the daughter she never had, like that. We had and we're very different. And that's what I think people understand is like, and that at times was frustrating for both of us.
That's fair.
But I was a 3-year captain for her. I was a source of a safe place, for her. And as a captain, I just tried to be the mediator.
Mediator. Yeah.
As a captain, I just try to be the mediator, right? For our team and for our staff. I loved the leadership role. I loved the mentorship role. I just loved this program, right? Like I had committed to another university and I had decommitted senior year spring because of a change of personnel at that program. And Kathy I thought I was walking on somewhere. My parents were ready to like pay for school, and Kathy gave me this opportunity. And so and Michigan State, they weren't great. Like they had not made the tournament in a couple of years. Like it was like, but I believed in Kathy and I believed in her staff. And I knew I was going to be challenged not only as a volleyball player, but as a young woman, right? Like I had played for a strong female head coach in high school. And I saw that in Kathy, and I saw a program and a university that valued women and valued athletics. Um, and so basically just our relationship, I think through the years of me being her captain and um, I never was like, oh, I want to be a coach. It wasn't even on my radar, right? Like I loved coaching summer camps, and my dad's a psychologist, my mom's a teacher, my whole family's in education. So like the teaching makes sense now. But she always says, I hire good people. I can teach them how to do the job, but I have to hire good people. And the relationship we had gave her that trust that I was going to be one of those people for her.
I love that. Well, and also what you said, like it was built off of a relationship. And I think many times people forget that relationships are very key. We don't want to burn the bridges. How do we keep those relationships going? How do we check in with each other? And one of the things that I teach a lot is how do we relate through communication, right? You don't have to agree on everything, but how do you find that common denominator, which volleyball, and how do we show up, And I think too, you said something that was really great where you said, I knew that I was going to be challenged as a volleyball player, but as a young woman. And I think when we talk about women in sports in general, I don't know about you, but I think we've made a lot of headway. In the growth pieces and what we see that they're capable of, just from I would say a collegiate place, but also a pro place as well. Volleyball, basketball, like soccer, like I'm seeing all of this growth, and I love it because I don't know if you feel this way, but when I was in high school, we had like a few people we looked up to. And recently I was doing a workshop around confidence with all these young athletes, and the names that they were saying to me, I'm like, whoa, all these names, and their input. So what do you see differently in the shoes of a head coach of where women's sports and women in leadership have gone?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. Like growing up, I'm from Chicago. My high school was a huge volleyball school. I don't know if I could have named like a single collegiate player, right? And now like Harper Murray is a household name, right? People who don't even know volleyball, we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go. But when you look at it, I tell our team all the time, there is no better time to be a woman in athletics, specifically a volleyball player. We have 2 pro leagues. We have more matches on TV than any other conference, right? We are now able to pay our young women and have them have the platform that they deserve. It's the fastest growing youth sport. So to be a woman in athletics and then also to be a Big Ten volleyball player at Michigan State, I mean, one of our values is our Spartan family, and what a privilege it is. So when it's 5 a.m. and you're getting up to go to lift and it's cold right now, you're right, remember that it is a privilege to wear the Spartan hat. It is a privilege to be a woman in athletics. And you're right, it hasn't been that way for a really long time.
Yeah. And as you were talking, the one thing that I also was thinking about is what a privilege. And also it adds this level of, I guess, weight that could be on people's shoulders too.
Yeah.
What do you see? And how do you see it from a physical and mental standpoint, from a collegiate standpoint?
I think we've gotten a lot better at acknowledging it, right? That this is something that is real, right? And that there's, I guess maybe your question, weight of the horizon, or will you say your question?
No,
again?
just the weight of, okay, there's more pressure. There's more eyes on everything. We can't just hide. I don't know about you, but we didn't have a TikTok in college. We didn't have to worry about social media. We didn't have to hear so-and-so talk about how we, missed something or the block wasn't well or, they're the people that I always say, the people that sit at home on the couch that have a lot to say but aren't out there actually doing it. And just the pressure of the game too. We want to show these next level girls, what's up. So yeah, those weights.
It's heavy. Right? It's heavy. And it's we talk a lot about what matters and whose voice matters,
Ooh, I love
because
that.
the flip side, right, of volleyball being so highly seen on TV and so popular in the youth is that there are a lot more voices, right? And there's a lot more opinions. And it is part of the privilege of our sports notoriety and of our growth, but it's also a burden, right? And a responsibility, and at times a detriment to our student athletes' mental health. And so we talk a lot about like what voices matter and how do you protect. I tell them all the time that the number one goal of my job, like the most important job I have, is to keep their physical, emotional, and psychological safety, right? Like they have to be physically, emotionally, and psychologically safe in all facets, whether that's walking to class, in our practice, in my office. And if there's ever something that's challenging that safety, I need to know about it. But it's really hard to sit down on my couch in here and be like, I'm getting DMs that are really awful, and that you want to be like, oh, I'm tougher than that. I don't have to read it. But opening up the vulnerability to say, hey, these things are happening and that's okay. Let us help you with some of that, is a part of the privilege of where our sport is going, but it's also definitely a burden.
Yeah. Well, and it's tough to your point. Like I think about the innocence that I had coming from high school to college, right? I actually look back at the moments I'm like, wow, I didn't know what I was getting into when I went to Michigan State, right? I came from a small town, big school, very different. And also just the level that I felt pressures in certain ways. And I wasn't even an athlete. And then you add the athlete piece, you add what I've been out of school a long time, 15 years or so, right? And things have changed. And so for me to even hear like, I can't imagine what it's like to get that DM, right? I can't imagine, like I've watched like Harper talk a little bit about that and other athletes that I follow of, like this is the stuff we hear. And I think in my head, wow, someone would send that, but they do. So it's like they're doing it. So how do we help them? And I love that you're saying like, that is your role. That is your job, right? And I think it's even different when we had Kathy and Mike on recently on the podcast. Like they're at a pro level with athletes, a whole different level of looking at performance and mental capacity and stuff. And so, when we think about those things, what can a parent do now to help their daughter on their athletic journey with those pieces? Because I know for me, and I don't know about you, but like I played year-round volleyball. I played AAU. I was like all into it. But I also had that mental shift of like, oh, I missed that. Or, I just, and I still think back to those moments because I'm like, why like mentally I wasn't fully there. And so like, what do you think like parents could do now? Because it's different now.
Honestly, I just think have the conversation, right? Have the conversation before you know about it, because by the time you know about it, they've probably not shared or they've heard things.
Yeah.
And now it's coming across your desk, right? When I hear of an issue, oftentimes, okay, what led up to this that it got to the point where now I know about it? So how early can I get involved? And so whether it's social media, or I mean, maybe it's an issue in a body image, right? Or maybe it's someone at school. And I think the safer that for me are athletes, and I don't have children yet, right? Like God willing, hopefully I have a daughter one day where I can have these conversations of like, whose opinion matters? Whose opinion matters? And how do you let in whose opinion matters? And how do you let by those who don't? Because people are going to say mean things, right? High school girls can be so mean, right? Like so mean. And then you get into this, whether it's your job or whether it's sports or whether it's your sorority or your youth group, right? Like someone will let you down and so how do you have that conversation before you have to have the conversation? And how are you a safe person for your child to bring it to and to help them delineate what voice matters and what do I take to heart? And how do you build that safety net of okay, that person made a comment about my weight or about my shoe size or about my, we lost yesterday, and how do I cope with that? Because it's really difficult.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that was coming up as you were talking is it's going to change continuously of how we have those conversations too. I think about like when we were young, we would hear, rub some dirt on it. Oh, they're just jealous. Like it's very easy to be passive with the conversation or think that those are helpful, right? But it's to your point, like understanding the method of the madness and how do we support them also not just from a physical standpoint, but also that mental standpoint as well. And how that's going to shift and change over time. And I always say like to parents, like what's something that you wish someone would have done for you? And then how do you show up for your daughter or your son that way? You know, even your point of whose opinions matter. I think back to a conversation I had probably like 10 months ago with a leader who is very prominent in his industry. And I just said to him like, the noises are loud sometimes for me. How do you handle it? And he said, well, do you know who the sharks are? And he said, no matter what you do, the sharks are going to come after you. They're coming after for blood. It doesn't matter how much you bend over backwards and try to like change who you are and blah, blah, blah. He said, they don't care. They're coming for it regardless. And as you were talking, I was literally picturing like, I'm a whiteboard girl, like putting the whiteboard up and saying like, do you know who those sharks are? And then do you know who's like your safe place? And if you don't know that, it's important to find that out.
Yeah. And it's important. And, you know, one of the best lessons my dad taught me is like, and honestly, just through who he is that you don't always have to solve it. Right. Like you just have to be a place that's like, you know, Brene Brown, my team has learned all about Brene Brown and just the difference between sympathy and empathy.
Yes.
Right? And sympathy
Love that.
is like, oh, I'm sorry, that sucks. But like, have you tried this? Have you gone to red light therapy? Have you worked out? Have you, you know, and empathy is, I'm going to crawl down into this hole and just sit in the darkness with you. And I'm not going to try to solve your problem. I'm not going to pretend I know how you feel, but I'm just going to sit here. And there's days in my office that an athlete comes in and I just sit and hold their hand and I offer them a tissue. And my dad was that person for me that I could call and he would validate my experience and he would listen and it didn't have to be fixed. He knew, he raised a strong daughter. He knew I would figure it out. But it was a safe person for me to share my emotion and to share. And he would say, okay, I'm here. What you call me whenever you need to. And that's why he is my first phone call because it's a safe place where you don't have to justify, you know, you don't have to justify why you're upset. You don't have to explain. You don't have to figure it out. You just get to feel it. And I think that would probably be my advice to parents is be a safe place where you're able just to hear and listen and not always have to solve.
I love that. And I will put in the show notes that video that Brene Brown does with Sympathy for Empathy because that is literally, I share that with so many people. And then once it clicks, you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was doing that. Because all you want to do, I always say to people, all we ever want to do is help. Like we do want to help. It's just the way in which we approach things, you know, and I'll share this other piece that I teach a lot is there's 3 different ways that you can help someone is asking them, do you want to be helped right now? Do you want to be heard right now? Or do you want to be hugged right now? And if you can
write that down.
Yeah, please. Helped, heard,
or hugged.
Hugged, yes. And if you can give them that opportunity, then they can figure out, well, what do I need in this moment? Because again, what I see a lot with people, and I do it too, I'm not perfect at it, is like, I do want to solve it because I want to make that person feel better. But unless they know what they need, then you can show up, right? Like sometimes I just need a hug. I actually don't need your advice. I just need you to give me a hug and tell me that it's going to be okay, you know? And,
or I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I just need some physical contact. Love it. I love that.
Yes. And so I've seen the game changing that's happened. I've also seen it in how I can vocalize now what I'm feeling. Like I actually don't need you to give me advice. I just need to be heard right now because I just need to process what's going on. And it's a lot like I deal with a lot with my coaching. I deal with processors who take days. I also deal with processors that are like right now, like I need the answer. And so the more that you can understand that, especially even with athletes, it helps you know like, okay, I gave them that feedback. They're going to need a few days to process that. Or they've got it and I'm going to see the change fast. It's just different, you know? So
good. My assistant, Kirsty Jackson, has been like so good for me because that is so us. Like she is a conflict agile human, right? Like if we have a disagreement, she wants to talk about it right now. And I'm like, I need a minute. Like, I need to sleep on it. And she was like, well, I'm waiting. Like, I'm ready, and I think, she's like, I'm not a yeller, but she's like, I'm ready. Like, let's go.
Yes,
And I'm like,
yes.
I need to. So it's been good for me to process a little faster. And maybe it's not a day. Maybe it's, hey, I need to go to my office and just like, have the idea. And it's good for her to be like, okay, I'm gonna process and let her process. And then when we come back, it's like so healthy. But it took us a little time to be like, hey, she's really conflict agile. I'm pretty emotionally intelligent, but I need to meet her halfway, and she needs. And like it's been such a good life lesson for me, because that was Kathy. Kathy was really conflict agile and really, and it would sometimes stress me out, right? And so now being the leader, flipping the seat, it's like the reverse, and she has been so helpful for me, and it's been awesome.
Well, and I love that. And I always, one of my keynotes that I teach, it's like, how do we turn confrontation into conversation? Like, how do we just have a conversation about this? Because many times we actually aren't trying to be confrontational. It's just that we had a disagreement and we don't know how to meet someone in the middle because we care so much. We care so much about that person that we don't even want to have the conversation, because then we know that we're going to upset or we might have a disagreement. But to your point, it's the meeting in the middle with two different personalities because I'm like that person. Like, I'm like, some days I'm that processor, and other days I'm like, no, like, I just need to know that you're not mad at me. Like, if you can just tell me that, then we can like circle back, but like give me a little bit of an affirmation so that I know like we're good, right? Okay, we're just going to talk about this tomorrow so I don't lose sleep. And everybody's different. Spring always feels like a fresh start to me. More light, more movement, more life. And let's be honest, when your schedule shifts, when work ramps up, and when you are chasing an active little one around all day, consistency can be the first thing that goes. And that's why I keep my health simple. You know by now, if you've been listening, I'm big on micro habits that are small and intentional actions that build momentum. And one of mine is every morning is 1 scoop of AG1. Instead of juggling a bunch of different supplements, AG1 simplifies everything. It's your multivitamin, pre and probiotic, and superfoods all in 1 scoop. And for me, it's about steady support. The superfoods and B vitamins help provide nutritional support for constant energy, which I absolutely need when I'm leading, coaching, recording, and traveling, and of course, following a very active baby around. I don't have time for complicated routines. I need something that fits into real life. And AG1 is that. It helps me reset, recharge, and show up fully, whether that's on stage, in a coaching session, or on the floor building blocks with my son. So if you're ready to simplify your mornings and prioritize your health in a way that actually lasts, go to drinkag1.com/theconfident to get your AG1 flavor sampler and a bottle of vitamin D3 plus K2 free in your AG1 welcome kit with your first AG1 subscription order. Only while supplies last. Again, that's drinkag1.com/theconfident. 1 scoop, 1 habit, a simple reset for a season ahead.
I started saying this, like, sometimes I'm an overthinker. I like walk into someone's office and I'll be like, I'm making up a story. I'm making up a story that your liking of my message meant that you're mad. And they're like, not at all. I'm like, great, cool. I just had to confirm or deny that my story I'm telling myself is real. And that has helped so much with conflict of just like, I'm making up a story. Am I close or am I way off? And a lot of times they're like, you are overthinking this. I'm like, cool, now I know.
Yes. Well, and I love that you're actually doing something about it, because how many people are just like, I'm just going to think about this. I'm just going to be like in my assumption mode and tell myself all of these stories. And then we don't like, and to your point, there's this thing called the spotlight effect where we think people are thinking about us more than they are. And they're not at all. They're like, no, I was good. I actually am thinking about what I want for dinner. And you're like, oh, you're not thinking about me all the time.
Like, I've already argued with you for hours in my head.
Exactly. And I think that is, I see this both with men and women, right? I do think that, women do have a lot of more stories in our heads than than maybe men do. Again, I'm a woman, so I know what's in my brain. But I also think, to your point, what are we doing about it, right? And I think that then when you're setting that that tone as a leader, you're also setting that. I look at your like team in a way as like if a company like had employees, right? Like you're recruiting, you're bringing people on, you're bringing the best team possible. And so you have to look at the different personalities and the different skill sets and what that looks like. And so what would you say, obviously, you know, you've over the years, you've changed, you've had growth. What would you say is for your leadership now? Is it different? Is it better? Like, what would you say has changed being a D1 head coach?
You have to say no a lot more.
Ooh, tell me more.
Right? Yeah, like as an assistant, you get to give your opinion a lot, but you're not the decider of playing time. You're not the holder of the standard. You're not telling your other assistants that's not good enough. You're right. Like, you know, and so Keegan, my friend, mentor, head coach at Minnesota, says this a lot. He says, how we hear and receive no and how we say no is some of the most important work that we do as head coaches, right? Like how we hear from our assistants, hey, you failed in this way, or you failed in this way, or how you hear from your players, I don't like how this, right, is really, really important. And how we say no, right? When I have to stop practice and say, this isn't good enough, that's hard, right? And that doesn't happen as often as an assistant. It happens sometimes, you know, when I have to tell my staff, like, this is not to the level that we need. Or when I have to tell a recruit, hey, we're going in a different direction. Those are things only head coaches can do, right? When I have to have a role clarity conversation with athletes, say, you have been starting, but you're not starting tonight. Right? Like saying no is so important and it's so hard. And one of our values, which I try to live by, is courageous conflict. And what we say is it's courageous conflict because we acknowledge the courage it takes to enter into conflict, to do it well. Some people love conflict, but they don't do it well. So it's not courageous because you're just doing it how you want to do it. Some people hate conflict. And so to even have that conversation takes so much courage. And I think as women, the stigma is to just not be that person and to let it go over your shoulder or to be the bigger person. And that's BS. We are not a sorority. We are a high functioning team that is trying to win. And so my job is not to find your best friends. I hope I do.
Yeah.
But that's not my goal. My goal is to win a Big Ten championship. My goal is to make the tournament. And so we're going to have conflict. So how we stay curious, how we stay kind, how we lead like with our emotions, how we find adult trusted mediators when necessary, how quickly we can enter into conflict takes courage. I said, it takes courage for me to sit you down and say, you're not playing tonight. But because I love you and because this is our value, I have to do it, you know? And one quote we use a lot with courageous conflict is that truth without love is harsh, right? So if you've ever had a coach or a boss or maybe a friend be like, well, I'm just being honest, but it's really hurtful because there's no love. There's no relationship. There's no trust built, right? So it's honest, but it's harsh.
Yeah.
But then love without truth is hollow, right? And I like to think of like the high school, like, oh my God, we have the same color pen. Did we just become best friends? And it's like, so hollow, right?
Yeah.
If I walk into the gym every day and tell them they're the best thing since sliced bread, it's so hollow, right? So there has to be a level of truth and love. And I can't just be harsh dictator all the time, but I also can't just have coffee and never tell them no. And so that as the head coach has been probably the hardest part of managing staff and players and having the courage to say no when I have to say no.
Well, and I'm picturing you, like I'm just going to picture you at the gym and you're like, I want to say something right now and like do a timeout for my team and say like, this isn't at the level. But I also like, you have to find that courage inside and not let that moment pass because then you go back to your desk at the end of the day and you're like, I should have said something then because now the time and moment has passed. And to have that confidence in yourself because normally you probably feel this way. Other people are thinking it too. But when the head coach doesn't say anything or like the founder, the CEO, the manager, whoever isn't saying it, then that's the standard that we're like, okay, we're going to get away with this.
And the
That's tough.
standards you walk past are the standards you're setting. So, regardless of whether they are your mission statement or your values or your goals, whatever you walk past, whatever you turn a blind eye to are the standards you're setting.
Yep.
And that is what I remind myself of like, I don't want to be pissed in November
Yeah.
when we're fighting to make the Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament because I didn't hold the standard in February. Right. And so that's what I remind myself of. And that's what I remind our team of the compound interest of the work you do at 7 a.m. when it's cold and dark shows up in October. And if we want to have a better November, which we do, we have to have a better March and a better February.
I love that. And the other thing that you said is like now I just like picture like, and I always say this because I'm a founder, you get all the noise. You get all the voices, you get all the feedback, and some of it's really helpful, but many times you're probably going through it. Like I always say, like you're going through it and like filtering. Okay, like what do I take on? What do I just let go? And that's tough. And I think that's the same thing as when you're giving feedback is the people have to know, like if someone is giving you feedback that is harsh, it's not with, love at all. They're taking it a certain way and then they're having to filter it. And I feel like it's this continuous thing where it's that filter. But to your point, like, I think it's also really great that you were in a role where you gave the feedback because now you're in a different role and you can appreciate both.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And I try to be really vulnerable with my assistants. And when they have the courage to tell me no or to bring, it's like, I really try to show them that I value what they're saying. I may not agree or do it,
True.
but I value it. And I want it to be a safe place where they can tell me no or where they can express their opinion. And then I decide from there, but I don't want it to be out of fear.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you handle then when you do make a decision and people don't agree with it and there's pushback and all you want to do, and maybe I just see this with some of my clients, y'all just want to give in, right? Like it's that people pleasing, like, okay, I'll just give in to this when really, if you give in, then we're setting that standard. So like, how do you filter through that?
The first question I ask is like, where does it fall in our values? Right? So like, is it consistent with our values?
I love that.
If it's not, it's a really easy no for me, right? Like if it's not in our values, it's like, nope, or like respectfully, if it is within our values, so like first year head coach, decisions on starting lineup, playing time decisions. It was really difficult. We had our team was really deep in the way that we played almost every person on our team at some point started, right? Like we unturned probably to a fault where like we weren't able to find consistency sometimes because I would switch because we had athletes who could do a lot of talented things. And there was one match that my two assistants kept, we had talked about something for kind of the last 2 weeks and they had brought it up. Hey, we think we should try this. We try this. And at one point during the match, someone brought it up to me again. And I looked at them and I said, I hear you. I hear you. I am constantly thinking about what you're telling me. I am making a head coaching decision not to do that. It is valid. It is a good idea. Right now, I'm not going to do that. So please focus your attention somewhere else. And they were like, okay. Because I was just like, shut up. Right?
Yes.
But I had not clearly defined where I was at. So it was, and then guess what? The next week we did it. It was a very good suggestion, but I was just like, no, right now I am not going to make that decision. So please focus on something else. How else can we win this game? And then we'll debrief later. But like I had to be firm in that. It was within our values. It was an asset to the team, but I wasn't going to do it. And I had to be better at communicating. Nope. This is where I'm at, my boundary right now. So do not bring it up again. But what you're saying is okay and it's valid. And then it was great. And then the next week we ended up doing it, right?
I love that.
But it is difficult. It is difficult. When it's outside our values, it's an easy no, to be honest.
Yeah.
But when it's within our values and it's like just a differing of opinion, those were times that it was hard not to second guess. I have many sleepless nights this fall, 12-12 against Purdue in the fifth set that we lose, and I didn't sleep a wink, right? What could I have done better? Like, being a head coach is lonely at times. It's really hard.
Yeah. And I think that when you bring up the sleepless nights thing, like how many people can relate to that, right? How many of us make decisions and then we look back and be like, we overthink it, but the decision's already passed. Like we can't change it, but we're still trying to live in that past, right? And there's healthy with that where it's like, okay, now I know what I need to do differently, but also like, don't overthink it so much where like you now like are frozen in time where you're scared to make a decision or a risky one too. Sometimes that comes into play. And that's a hard balance. Like, I don't think anybody has this perfect rhythm. I also don't know anybody that's never had, like, especially at like levels of like CEOs, executives and your role where it's like, I haven't had a sleepless night. I talked to a leader the other day who I just admire to the core. And I just sat, because he just like seems like he's got it all together. And I sat him down and we went out for coffee and I said, do you ever have like sleepless nights? And he goes, yeah, Lisa. And I go, oh, and he goes, yeah, like, and I just was, he's a guy that's doing very well financially and really well within his company. And so I just assumed because he had hit a level of like 30 years that he no longer was feeling that way. And so the more that like, that's more honesty. I love that. Right. And I think that it's too, then how do you learn from that? And how do you help more people figure out that like, hey, we're all just human. But also like, back to your core values. I love that that's your lens. And I think when people set core values, we have them, but like then we don't filter through them. And that's another beautiful thing. I talk a lot on this podcast about like 2026 is the year I come home to myself after years of maybe like fighting that battle a little bit. And one of my core values is freedom. And it's funny when I was thinking about that months ago, I was like, ooh, that's out of alignment with what I'm choosing in my life. And so like when you get back on the radar, to your point, and making decisions through that filter, it's like, I don't know, like take the weight off the shoulders. Like it's a lot easier.
Yeah, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, love that. So, okay. So what, if you could change, I'm going to kind of go like to like now, like with like the systems and how girls in sports, like if you could change one systematic thing about girls sports in the US, whether youth, high school, college, what would it be and why?
I don't know. Man, what a good question.
I can ask it a different way. So I guess what came up for me, like as we're talking, and if something else comes to mind, please let me know. But like I played since I was in 7th grade, AAU. I played all year round, right? And then I hit high school because I wanted the college scholarship that I gave up other sports to do it. And then I chose not to play college because I had hit a point. And I think about it now. Now, that was on me. That was a choice I made. No one pressured me to do that. But I felt also like this other piece. And then I look back now and we always joke like soccer wasn't my other sport that I loved playing. And I stopped playing that when I was a freshman in high school. And I look back and I'm like, really wish I would have stuck with that. Not because I was going to go to college for it, but because I loved that sport so much. And now having a son, he's very young, but I always say like, I really hope he plays soccer so that I can like be a coach. And so I like look at like, what are the pressures, right? That I see now of like, we have to play one sport or the opposite of people are like, don't play one sport, play multiple. And that's just like a hard balance. I still don't know what the right answer is. And so I just, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or something else came up for you.
No, thank you for sharing that. Something else did come up and I don't know if I would change it, but I think I would tell parents or guardians, to step back.
Ooh.
I was, and listen, my dad played collegiate football. He played briefly, tried in the NFL. He's coached. My mom was a coach my whole life. Like now they didn't play volleyball, which I think was a blessing. I was on the 14 threes team. I was on the 15 fours team. In the most important recruiting year, I was on the 16 threes team. I was not on an elite team until my senior year of high school. And how many kids right now, if your kid, this is not Lisa, but the general your kid makes a 15 fours team, how many parents are pulling that kid out of that club and going to another club? Or pulling that kid out of a sport and going to another sport? And my parents were like, is this what you want to do? Yeah, okay. than be the hardest working kid in the gym. My dad would say, have fun, work hard, be safe. Have fun, work hard, be safe. Every time I left the house, have fun, work hard, be safe, because I'm not a very good driver. So that's what he was referring to, right? But like, have fun, work hard. Are you the hardest working kid in the gym? Are you a good teammate? Okay, you can't control that you touched 9'6" and you're 5'8", right? Like, that's why you can't control you're on the 15 fours team.
Yeah.
I mean, I control a little bit.
Yeah.
But how many parents, when I tell this story, people look at me with these like bulging eyes. I'm a Big Ten varsity athlete. I'm a successful coach, and I was on the 15 fours team. And I just think that's where I get really passionate of like, let your kids figure it out. And if they don't want to do it, that's different. But if they love it, and just because they're not on the elite team, I would not be here where I am today if my parents didn't give me the space to be on the 3rd and 4 and do the private lessons and do the extra training. And my confidence comes in my work ethic, not because I went to a new club and was put on the elite team and told I was the best kid ever, because that's hollow love, right? I had harsh truth, a lot of harsh truth, and I persevered and I fought my butt off and I got in the best shape of my life and I got a Big Ten scholarship, but I was on 15-4. So that would be my systematic change. Is like, too quickly, are we changing the path for the child, or are we preparing the child for the path?
That is beautifully said. So thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people can resonate because they don't have the answer of like, what do I do? Or to your point, we talked about earlier, is filtering the noise too. Like, okay, all of their friends made the elite team, Johnny didn't. Okay, right? Like, and so that doesn't mean it's anything bad. It is what it is. But like, have the conversations, back to what you said earlier. Learn, does your kid even care? Or do you care more, right?
Yeah. Is it your pride or is it theirs? Because comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And maybe your kid wants to play on the 3rd team instead of sit the bench on the elite team all year. Let him play.
Yes.
Let him,
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm so, I'm now at an age where I talk to my parents. I'm like, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Like, I have so much gratitude that they let me figure it out. And I'm sure, like, I'll never forget sitting outside my mom's car before tryouts, and I was crying. I didn't know if I was even going to make the club.
Yes.
And she was just like, whatever you want. We'll do whatever you need, whatever you want, but not this is what we're doing because you made the 3rd team. And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. I love that. I give my parents a lot of credit for like giving me a lot of grace over the years. Right. And I think too, like, there are moments where I wasn't on the elite team. I also think it was really cool. I look back, I played on a lot of different AAU volleyball teams, and I look back and I think I have so many friends from different places because I didn't stick with the same 10 people my whole life. Right. Like, I had to get out of my comfort zone. I would drive 45 minutes to AAU practice because we didn't, it was just different where I was at. And I learned so much about independency, of getting out of my comfort zone to talk to people, seeing my strengths. And that has helped me tremendously see where I'm at. But it goes back to like, my parents didn't have, they wanted me to play college because I wanted to play college. Once I made that decision, I didn't want to play anymore. They were like, what? And they were like, okay, she doesn't want to. She wants to go to Michigan State, right? And so I think then being okay with those pieces is really awesome. I think we were just talking about this a couple months ago. My mom said, I think you'd be really great if, we have a daughter one day, if you get to coach her play volleyball. And I said, oh no, Mom, I will never be a coach. And she goes, why? I said, because I get too much into it that I won't be able to separate. And I already know that about myself. And I want to just be kind of like, what you're able to be for your students and your athletes. I just want to be for my daughter. Like, I don't want, like, I think I'd be too harsh. I don't think there would be love, right? Like, cause I just like, or like, cause I like watch sports games. I'm like, well, like you yell at the TV and I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to be that mom, right? I don't want to be that. Yeah. So it's like, I have to check myself, but I think it's also like knowing where you want to show up as a parent and how do you support your kid and what that looks like, and being okay of like, yeah, maybe so-and-so is coaching them I don't have to be. I get to play a different role, right? Like I get to be a different voice and how that shows up differently. So love that you shared that. So next question, what gives you hope for the next generation of female athletes and just like future for women in athletics in general?
What gives me hope is, first of all of the women's shoulders that we're standing on, right? I look at people like in our sport, Kathy George, Mary Weiss, like all those who came before me that like, I am a Big Ten head coach as a female because of them and because of what they've done. And now there's 7 of us, right? And there was years that Kathy was the only one. And so I think what I'm grateful for is that representation is growing, right? And that matters. If you see her, you can be her. And that's important for all young women, right? From a variety of diversity reasons, right? If you see her, you can be her. And I want young girls to know they can do it, right? And so I what gives me hope is the growing level of women in all college athletics, whether that's administration. You're seeing more women in football programs and basketball programs as referees, right? You're just seeing women show up in spaces they have historically not been invited to do and saying, I'm here and I can do this. And to me, that gives me hope. And I hope I can continue paving and trailblazing the way that the women before me did for those young girls who are now growing up saying, I can be the next Harper Murray, right? I can be the next Big Ten head coach. I can be the next NFL female referee, right? Like, how cool is that? We didn't have that. And that's gives me a lot of hope for the future.
Yeah. I hope one day I have a daughter and she's like, hey, Mom, I'm going to go play flag football. I'm going to be like, I wish I could have played flag football when I was your age, right? Like just the opportunities that like are out there in so many different ways. So I love that. So kind of to wrap up, I always ask like some fast questions. And so if you had to choose your zone of genius, which is usually where your greatest strengths and your biggest passions and something that like if you could work on something for 8 hours in a work day, what would that be? What's your zone of genius, do you feel?
Okay, this is crazy as like an introvert at heart, but like I love the relationship piece of my job. So if I could have a coffee, a lunch, a meeting with each one of my athletes for 8 hours a day, I would do it. Like I just love learning their stories. I love building their trust. Whether it's recruiting, the athletes I'm recruiting, whether it's our staff, right? Like, and it drains me. It does. Like I have to like, but when I do it, and when I had coffee with one of our student athletes yesterday, and I walked out of that coffee shop and I just felt full, right? I was just like, man, I learned so much about her and her story and where we're at. I'm so proud of her. And I'm so happy she's part of this program. Like that just fills my cup. And I love that part of my job.
I love that for you. That's awesome. So what would you say is a lesson that life kept handing you until you learned it?
I like control and that you are not always in control, right? And for me, it's my faith, right? For me, it's God's faithfulness that like God is faithful and he has been. And there are times that I have to just keep making the next right decision without knowing what's going to happen, right? I moved to Chicago, then I spent a year in Lincoln, Nebraska. And at the end of that year, I'm like, I have no idea what's next. I'm coaching club. What am I going to do? And then Keegan Cook calls at Minnesota. I take a chance. I go to Minnesota. No idea, right? And in 2 years from being a club coach, I'm hired as a Big Ten head coach within 2 years. And guess what? I would have never predicted or could control that. But to me, it shows God's faithfulness. And it's taught me that like, I don't have to have all the answers before I take the next first step. And that has been very freeing in my life and actually in this role, that as a head coach, I will not know all the answers and I can still move forward without knowing what the outcome is going to be.
Oh, I love that. That's a great lesson for anybody, especially the controllers type A people. Mm-hmm. Okay, last question. What would be your walk-up song?
Okay, so I'm like an emo girly at heart. So when I work out with like my trainer, we're always playing like 2000s emo rock. So it'd either be like something Linkin Park.
Love that.
Or it would be like Far Over Closer by the Chainsmokers, because anytime that song plays, I have like 3 DMs or people being like, because that was like my song. I mean, I moved into my office, Lisa, and on my office from our facilities, who is my dear friend, is like this framed on my desk. It plays every warm up for me. Like it's just become this like, so actually I would like something a little bit like darker, but If I had a walk-up song, it'd probably be Closer by the Chainsmokers.
I love that. And you know what I'm going to probably do? Get in the car and like listen to that song, because now that is that's a good one. Awesome. Well, it was so great to chat with you today. I love the conversations about like women's sports, just being a leader in general. Like, how do we show up? I love your thoughts of like trust and love and harsh. Like, that is just so beautiful. And like, congratulations on what you're doing. I love seeing women just succeed in so many ways. I also know that it's never easy to get to where you're at. So please make sure that you're celebrating all of what you've accomplished. And I'm excited to see what you guys do this new season.
Lisa, thank you so much for your time. We could have been here for 2 more hours.
I know, girl. It was awesome.
This was amazing. I really appreciate it.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for tuning into today's conversation. It was really fun. I loved it. I always have these like feel good feelings after podcasts where I'm like, man, I want to be that person's friend and want to get to know them more. And I think the other, the one thing that really stood out, there was a lot, but, the alignment to your values. I think that is so powerful. I love that we had that as like our filter of how do we make decisions. It's something I teach a lot in my keynotes. We've talked about it before on this podcast, but we haven't recently. And so if you're trying to make decisions in your life, like what are the values and how are you utilizing those as your filter is what I would want you to take away, along with many other things. So if you enjoyed today's podcast, please let me know. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our website, DM me and let me know what you took away and how you're going to implement them to your lives. Truly, I just love hearing from all of you. I love having the audience tell me what they're taking away and how they're implementing it into their lives. So thank you for tuning in, for being on this journey with me. And as I say at every podcast, continue to spread love and kindness to everybody that you meet. And have a great day. Thank you. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Confident Podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. So send me a message at podcast.lisatarkington.com. Don't forget, while you're there, to subscribe to our newsletter, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And don't forget to spread the good by sharing this with someone in your life. Remember, you have the power to choose confidence every single day. Keep showing up, keep striving, and keep believing in your potential. I'm cheering you on, and I'll see you next time.